And welcome to the committee meeting for Norwood City Schools on August 8th, 2017. This is held at the Board of Education office. It's 5:30 in the evening. I think just to start us off, all 5 board members are in attendance. Our treasurer, Mr. Strasser, our superintendent, Kathy Sabo. We have John Peter and Mr. Brandon Atwood. Chris Cheston's here. And we are taking...
Yes.
Okay, all right. All right, so item A is our discussion items. First one is construction update.
Sure, we'd like to share with you.
Pledge.
Do we say the pledge? We can start with the pledge.
I don't remember what I don't
Right.
remember at this point.
It's number on the agenda, but we should do it. All right. I pledge
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Really good construction.
So we'd like to share with you a construction update. Mr. Strasser and I took a tour with Mr. Peter, Mr. Regal, representative from Steed, Hammond and Paul, which was Jerry Durer, and Ron Hicks from SHP. And so we weren't able to get to all of the buildings yesterday just because of time constraints, but we were able to visit Sharpsburg Primary, the middle school, and the high school. So we started our tour at Sharpsburg Elementary, and to begin, they will be receiving an additional keypad, which makes it easier for folks to swipe when they enter the building. So there'll be a few more of those added to just add that access. At the elementary, they have new office space. There was flooring down, the walls were painted, we're waiting on some ceiling tiles to be dropped, and of course some electrical to be finished, and perhaps a few inspections. The second set of security doors, which will be located inside of the building, will not arrive and be completely ready to be installed until the 3rd week of September. And same with the primary, the Sharpsburg primary, that second set of safety doors that will create that receiving area that makes you go directly into the office. Those won't be ready until the 3rd week of September. When we went to the middle school, again, we'll receive additional keypads right there at the girls' entrance. And as it stands now, many people will use their key, which sets off an alarm, so it will be very helpful to have an additional keypad there. The new steps inside of the building of the middle school should be finished this week, early next week. And the outside steps, those being completed was depending on a few days of good sunshine to refinish those. The second set of doors at the top of the middle school, once you're inside, to create that alcove or that holding area, that will not be finished. They will not be here and be installed until the 3rd week of September. The high school, they did make an opening as a guest when you enter into the building. On the left there, they have a hole in the brick where you can speak directly to an office representative. So they'll finish out that area, and that, of course, is ready for the beginning of the school year. But that second set of doors that will stop folks without permission to enter the rest of the building will not be ready until the 3rd week of September. And as I said, we ran out of time. We didn't get to go to Norwood View or to Williams with the team, but we knew they were meeting this morning. We will get back with them and view those 2 buildings and have additional information for you. And if there are any questions, we did have John Peter come tonight so that he could intelligently answer specific questions with regard to the construction.
I have questions. When we approved the blueprints and we approved the security, it was my understanding that the whole point of this was to get rid of the fact that people could just enter into the building. And it appears and I've been to Williams, but I haven't really been anywhere else. It appears that you walk in, the first set of doors are open, you walk in, there's going to be another set of doors, but there's windows and, the secretary or whoever gets up and walks over to the window, and the person signs in, then they let them in those doors. Once they let them in those doors, they don't have to go to the office. They can go anywhere else. They can go, so I'm not sure what the point of that is. It was my understanding that they were supposed to go directly into the office, and then they could leave to go where they were supposed to go. It wasn't just going to be a window. It was going to be, you have to go into our office and be in the office space before you were let out. But now it's really no different than having a buzzer at the door where you buzz them in and they walk in. Because they have to make their way to the office even through the second set of doors.
Well, at the middle school, it does allow them to go into the office area. But you're right, at Sharpsburg Elementary, it does not necessarily, at this point, the way I understand it, allow for that. And John, you can speak to this, but I know that does provide an amount of time for appropriate people to respond if needed necessarily. So it's another barrier when it's put in place.
Well, except,
Yeah.
I mean, worst case scenario, if you look at what happened
Right.
with Sandy Hook.
Right.
That gentleman got buzzed in. And
Right.
he didn't go to the office. The
Right.
secretary went running down after him, and she was the first one shot.
But all of the communication, and it still can happen, so even if they got buzzed past the
Right.
second set of doors.
Right.
But it's just but if you have some time and have that exchange to make sure that they're meant to be in the building, get their driver's license, all of that, before you then let them go. But after that holding in some of the buildings, then they are free to go. Yeah.
I mean, I thought we wanted the office as our stopping point. And that, I mean, if you go into the office and you have the person in the office that has a buzzer and you can't get out of the office unless you're buzzed out.
Right.
I mean, granted, those people in the office are under, it's
Under
not
duress,
in a good
right.
place, but, that's not our entire school district in our buildings.
Right.
It just makes me nervous that I don't think we're paying for the money that, I just don't think it's much of an improvement. I mean, somebody can look at somebody and say, oh yeah, they're good. It's no different than the buzzer.
But I think the idea of the transaction window is if you were to go to the office anyway, you're going to get your signature, you'll probably get on camera, and you'll get a badge to wear that says visitor or something. So if you've got that transaction window, you're getting the same effect as if you would come into the office. And if somebody says, oh, well, this person shouldn't be into the building anyway, well, then they won't get buzzed past that secondary door.
So you're
Whether they
saying it's a
come-
face-to-face interaction versus just a camera interaction. So it's two interactions the way I understand it. It's a camera interaction that allows you access in, if granted. And then the second step in that security measure would be a face-to-face interaction.
And I guess what you're saying is that you would have liked it to be that they were buzzed into the office, and the office
And
was the
then
only.
that was the face-to-face.
Right.
Yeah, because originally when they
Because you can
talked,
see their clothing, you can see
Right.
you can see their face, you can see, I mean, you can just detect.
Right. All of your
things.
But then
senses
you
get
can
to be
see all that
used.
through the transaction window as well.
yeah,
That
but
was the
we're,
idea of the window.
we wasn't planning on having somebody sit in the transaction window all day long.
Well, I think it was only at Sharpsburg and potentially here.
No,
But somebody would have.
The view is going to be
View is
It's gonna be the worst.
Yeah. Well, that's the tip. She has that's the only school that actually can see anybody coming in and out.
Yeah, view's the only one, I think, where the transaction window is separate from the office, I
Yeah.
believe, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
But I was kind of understanding we wasn't gonna be paying for somebody just to sit there all day long at a window when it was only needed in the morning
No.
and in the evenings, and if they have a play or something like that going on.
Right.
If not, somebody's just gonna sit there.
Yeah, no. It was going to buzz into the office, and then someone from the office would have to run over to the transaction window. But no one was going to sit there all day. At least that's what we understood.
Well, then, at a lot of these schools, then it makes more sense, just, especially like a view, just for her to be able to buzz people in and out instead of that being moved over into that office. I mean, we took up a classroom for no reason, really.
Yeah.
And the other thing was,
I don't
like-
think it represents any, I don't know.
Yeah, going back to
I
what
just-
you were saying
I mean, I thought
about
it was supposed to be more.
the separation, originally when we talked about it, it was like in the middle school, it was gonna be 2 glass doors
Right.
going across. So when you came in, you had to go to the office, and then you would get a badge
Right.
that would open it up.
Right, you had no choice, you
And
couldn't,
the
you
same
had to
thing
go
at-
into the office
at
to get
you.
your badge and sign in.
It was glass doors, and if the fire alarm went off, the doors would automatically open up, and then it went from that to
Right.
just doing
Right.
the,
They're calling it a
Doors across the
vestibule,
front.
I think that was the word they used.
yeah, you
Um,
know. I mean, it went from one to the other to where we went around, and it's like, oh, we're gonna do this instead of doing the doors and stuff like that. You know, like, I mean, high school doesn't really need anybody sitting there. They can use, you know, their
I
secretary.
think the way it's set up, because they've opened that, so where the secretary sits presently, she could
Right.
truly just turn in her
Turn,
chair, and it's right about that same
Yeah.
height.
Right.
So, yeah, and, you know, I looked at you, and it's a wreck. I mean, the lights hanging down from the ceiling, you know, and I understand it depends on the AC, if we're gonna go with the unit on the roof, or if we're going with something else. Which I was kind of understanding, all that stuff was already been laid out before all this ever started, but, I mean, the lights just hanging from the ceiling with the wires running across like that, and we're 2 weeks from school starting. I mean, I understand eventually there'll be a drop ceiling in, and Lynn actually took me to the other ones where they had the drop ceiling in with those lights. It is a huge improvement.
It does, yeah.
I mean, you know, you guys were spot on getting those lights, because it does make the room a lot brighter. But the concern is if fire inspector or anybody like that comes in, you know, they're gonna question the way it's ran right now. You know, I mean, I guess we're getting a little ahead with the AC and everything else, but, you know, I think 2 weeks before school, I mean, or we gotta wait till August 3rd, that should have been, those doors should have already been ordered. Cause they already had the specs and everything on the rooms from the architect.
At least what we were told, the doors have been ordered. It's just that one manufacturer can make those doors, and that's what takes so long. And so it sounds like it's the 3rd week in September. And we knew going in that we weren't going to be ready for that second set of doors at the start of school. So we knew that, but everything else would be complete. It was just waiting on the doors. And then
My understanding at Sharpsburg is that everything will be ready with the functional,
right.
with the exception of the doors inside the new office area. Those will not be in place.
Right.
And then, of course, that second set of safety doors, those will not be in place.
Right.
And so, from each of the buildings, that second set of security safety doors will not be in place. And the way I understood it, it was the specs from the hardware were needed to place the holes in the correct spot to press the doors. And so those were 2 of the holdups, and that's why they'll be delivered and put in place the 3rd week of September, as I'm told.
But security-wise, the start of school, or for the first few weeks of school, our standard security measures will be in place as if, you know, the end of
Yes.
last school year, but it's just the second set of doors that
That's
we
right. That's
were
right.
waiting on, and
That's
that's
right.
won't happen until later.
And we have some corrections to some of the swipe areas, particularly Sharpsburg, primary. Some of those swipes weren't necessarily communicating with our security system. So John is working to get that corrected so that keeps us safe even during the school day at the start of the school year.
John, the aesthetics on the drop ceiling, like Tim had said, I went into Caleb Barber's room and he's got the drop ceiling that looks nice. Is that something that's going to be contingent upon the air conditioning and when that'll get put in place? Or
I'm waiting to find out if the air conditioning that's going to be planned across all the buildings will involve drop ceilings in every classroom. Or will they be ceiling-mounted diffusers coming through a drop ceiling? Or will they be just a switching out of the unit ventilators through the wall? If it's just for the unit ventilators, then there likely would not be a drop ceiling. But if a drop ceiling is required for the ceiling diffusers, then yeah, these lights would just be disconnected, change, you fit, drop them, and they fit right into the grid.
do we have a plan B if the drop ceiling is not needed?
Okay.
As far as the wire going across and Is that something we've thought about, or? I don't know, I'm just asking.
It could be rerouted.
Okay. Because I mean, I understand what Tim's saying, that you go in, it's a drop ceiling, you don't see it, when you see it there, it's,
Right.
you look at it and say, I know how some people, and I won't call Kenny out, but when he was in school over there, he would have been throwing things at it. And trying to hang things off of it, and,
Well, but the existing fixtures, I've been calling them ice cube trays, for
Yeah.
lack of a better term, because they look like ice cube trays. But, yeah, we'd climb up there to take those down, and you'd see all sorts of things up on top of there, so it's,
that's where it came from.
so it's,
And the pencil's stuck in the ceilings.
Yeah.
John, how did your meeting go today?
it went well. Brielmeyer was very receptive to the things that were brought in their attention. They said that the ceiling pads would be installed today, which I stopped over on my way over tonight, and they have been installed in the ceiling at Sharpsburg. And then they focused on cleaning out the main hallways through all the buildings. I know at the point I saw them at 2:30 this afternoon, they had everything cleared out, and they said they were still trying to get up to view. So I'm not sure if they got up to view this afternoon or not, or if they said to do that tomorrow.
Have we got everything worked out with Scarlett and Gray to get another clean?
Yes, as a matter of fact, the contractor touched base with them, and they will be paying for Scarlet Gray to do it.
Oh, nice.
So, I know you didn't need to go through all the buildings, but besides the doors, do you feel like we'll be ready for school start?
I do.
No, we need to. We don't have a choice, right? That date doesn't change.
I think as one of, I think it was Ron Hicks said, it will be functional. It will not be complete, but it will be functional. And we'll have the ability to work within that space.
And it will be safe.
Can you try and explain to us like how this works? I mean, there's a lot of moving parts and we got a lot of buildings and a lot of moving parts and a lot of things going on. And I also over at Williams, because I'm right there, so I always hear what goes on over there. I know that the other day there was a drywaller in there, and he was doing drywall, and a woman came in and she painted the drywall, but it wasn't even ready to be painted, and he came in and said he had to redo it all because who coordinates that stuff? I mean, isn't our construction
That
guys
would be
supposed
the general contractor, Brielmeyer. They are coordinating the subcontractors to come in and do the work.
Because it doesn't sound like they're doing a very good job, and maybe we need to. But you talked to them today.
Yes.
Okay, and John, I had made from the meeting we had last week with Jerry, the statement to you, I think, as I forwarded that report, that the security would be at least at the level of last year. So I think there was one or two exceptions to that, but it's being addressed.
It's being addressed.
Okay.
Yeah, we did find two buildings, Sharpsburg Elementary and Norwood View, where the front door push button with the camera had been removed. But again, I saw Brielmeyer this afternoon at 2:30, and they said they would have the access control people up tomorrow to start working on all the issues across all the buildings.
Okay. So functional, but not complete.
Not complete, but functional.
Can I? Did you find the key?
John, do you have a key to Ernie's office?
Not since we put new locks
There
on
is
here
an
recently.
additional key across the hall.
There's not an additional key. Okay, I had Bridget locked my keys I left my keys on the table and told her to lock the door, so my car keys are on the table. So.
You're spending the night.
And, no.
I guess bedroom next door.
Okay.
I can push the dogs out of crates.
Okay.
Yeah.
I got one other question for you. On the entrance over here at Williams, and even out here,
Okay.
what we were told, and what we're finding, so that's not always the case, but we were told the top was going to be aesthetically like the rest of the building. It would be glass so you could see through, kind of like the main entrance was. It looks like they've drywalled. Was that not in the specs for?
What I've seen in the specs, it was expected to be drywall.
Okay, thank you.
So we're getting what we're paying for. We just want to make sure that we're not paying for something that we're really not getting.
I believe that is correct, yes.
Back to this question on holding in the office space. Which building, so in the high school, they will enter in and there will be still a window there for them to do the exchange. But then once they're into the building, they're into the building.
And you know, we brought that up in the sense that my question was, where is the wall going to go?
Right.
And if you put it at what looks like an appropriate spot, that's almost the middle of the hallway.
Right.
So evidently it was not spec'd out to make a little jog
Right.
to just make you go into the office area, which would have been just a few feet
Right.
there to the left.
Right.
And that was spec'd out and approved that way, and that is that.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds as though it's exactly what you're expecting at the middle school level.
Yeah.
At Sharpsburg Elementary, it is not, nor at the primary it is.
Right. Yes. And I knew all the buildings because of how they're established, and those are also our main entrances for the kids. So
Well,
if
she can see the door.
you had to mix for both.
Yeah, I don't understand if you got a window there, why
That's
can't
why
you
they
just
should
have the
put
window?
that's just put the two doors in, so you can see.
At Williams, that probably could have
I
happened.
took her
Right.
classroom.
At the high school, there's actually a
Stories for the kids.
radiator
and all that.
right underneath the window.
Recalls.
That probably possibly could have been moved, but then you would have been coming in right behind where the secretary sits. So it would have had to involve reconfiguring the whole
Right.
office.
The middle school has stairs, so does view, so you couldn't come in up off the stairs.
But the landing at the top of the stairs at Williams was
Bigger.
wide enough to accommodate doors at the top.
Go out of the office, around, through the classroom.
Well, see, we
into
even
the
talked
closet,
about that,
the
we even
closet.
talked about how they had to remove the slab of marble because it wasn't wide enough to accommodate at the middle school, and I don't get how we missed that.
We were told that during last meeting.
Don't they need to do?
Well, we were told that when
I
they
mean,
were
only school
designing it.
that can actually see.
We were told that they would be replacing them, putting them back with the original. And then we were told in our last meeting that they were not able to do that.
That's why.
They are in the, I think they have, I can't remember exactly, if it's 2 or 3 treads, they're able to lay 1 tread of the new marble steps a day.
Okay.
So that's how long that takes. And the marble did appear to be high quality. A little more veining than we're used to, but it was high quality.
So how are we on budget wise then with all this? Are we on track?
Well, I need to go back. I'm going to have to go look at that. I mean, we're early into the project. So we had numbers established for each phase, or there were numbers established for each phase. It wasn't a grandiose, I mean, it's a big project, but it's not as in, we had enough money to do everything, but we should get a decent project for it. So, it's, and we have the permanent improvement dollars as well to be able to use on the project. One of the things that I had asked the architect was, an option to build into this is to spec it at budget or as, kind of lower cost, but then to provide for alternatives. So, for example, if you're doing a project and there's 3 things or 2 things, like, for example, if there was particular things to middle school that were important to you to preserve, that you would then say, okay, well, here's our budget part of it, we get that, but we'd also like you to what else could we do? And then we price that as an alternate in the bid specs. And I don't think there's been, the way in talking to the architect, I don't really think that that's been done to date in terms of upgrades to price.
I'm not sure.
Okay. I mean, I don't know. So to stay on budget, here's the one package, but what kind of price? Might be that you get a really good price on something that puts wood doors on something as opposed to aluminum. So
Okay.
What's the change order process, John? If someone has it, who approves that? How's that work?
The only change order I had in the last project, which was the HVAC project at the middle school, right before spring break, I received the change order after the project was complete. And it had to do with removing some ductwork above the drop ceiling, which ended up not having to be done. So we didn't approve it. I didn't approve it after the fact. We came back and then we were not billed for it. It was taken off the invoice. On this one, I had not received a change order. I was expecting until the end of the project again. Well, it turns out there were 6 basically outstanding. So then I saw them for the first time late last week. And there were 6 of them. I went ahead and signed off on the first 4 because I knew they were legitimate, I guess, for lack of a better word. But the last 2 I still have any questions about. And I think I've learned just yesterday that the 5th one was just a terminology that I wasn't familiar with, so that one's probably okay. It's the 6th one we're just waiting to, we would have preferred to have all of the list of door access hardware divided up between the 6 different buildings. And so we're just kind of waiting on that to be divided up per building.
So they send them to you?
As of last week, I believe they will, but I've not received them through the project.
How's that communicated to you? Is it they email them to you, or
I think, has Heather received it, or did she just get them last week for the first time?
I think we just got our first ones, but to email those to you when they come in or tell you to pick them up. So
they come in by paper?
yes.
I just trying to get the time frame of how long it takes, who submits, who approves, and I just don't want it to be a change order that's 45 days and you just seeing it for the first time.
But in terms of change orders that you've talked about at your construction meetings, what have you talked about so far in the project of change orders that you're aware of in those meetings?
The marble was actually included as a change order, and that was actually an alternate bid in the original bid opening.
Okay.
So I think that was the first one. When the marble came up and it was cracking as they were bringing it up, they knew right there it was not going to go back down.
Mm-hmm.
So they knew marble was going to be needed for the middle school front steps. The added doors and door hardware for the extra doors around the district that were requiring then card readers and door access. That was one of them. The doors had a fire rating that originally, when they put it out, the specs out, I guess the fire rating was not the same as what the city of Norwood required. So that there was an increase there in the cost of the expense of the doors for the fire rating. The last ones I think I'm drawing a blank on.
And we asked about that one, for example, and I believe that the answer was that, and this was in the last week, that they spec'd it the way they normally spec it, but Norwood had a different standard for that. And so, I don't know the process of what they, would think that they would have contacted Norwood on that. I don't know what the breakdown was or if there was one there.
Just one quick question about the doors and the ordering. Is there a calendar that tells you the lead time on these things, and these are when the POs should have been cut for these doors? I guess I'm just having a little trouble with why we're having doors 3 weeks late. We've been doing this for quite some time. How does that work?
My understanding is, as SHP put the specs out and it went out to public bid in late April or early May, once they found the general contractor, he then had to go with the specs and get the doors ordered. Mm-hmm. And I think it was at that point right there, by the time I think we were in late May or early June, where he realized there was a 12-week lead time on the doors. So one of the best ways we could avoid that is just start early in the whole process of going out to bid and get the general contractor in place a month or two, maybe more in advance.
Yeah.
I'm also hearing that with the economy changing, there's more people doing work and then more a need for more materials. So it's,
How do we prevent that? I mean, is there potentially anything else that has a long lead time that they're?
that I don't know. That would be found out from the general contractor, who would be determined at the next bid opening.
Yeah. Okay. That's all I have.
Aggravated with the doors. It's just not what I think we're paying for something that's really not any better than what we get. We're paying
I
a lot
can't
of
see
money,
doors taking 12 weeks.
a lot of money for nothing better than what we get.
I can buy copper.
We did the
for-
tours. We went through and did the tours, and so we
And
talked
I don't
about
know,
the windows.
I must have totally missed the part that they said they were not going directly into the offices.
No, you didn't miss it.
Well, Sarah's saying I didn't.
I guess
You
it's
did the tours?
I guess it's interpretation.
Yeah, we got the tours.
But
Yeah.
he was stood in
Here's
front and
the
said,
door.
here's the window, and there will be a glass so that you can slide your
See, I don't remember.
driver's
that.
license
I don't
underneath,
either.
and there would be
I remember them
like a
saying,
ticket booth or
there's
something.
gonna be the door, and they're gonna go into the office, and they're gonna have to get their driver's license and all their. before
No, I
they
do
can go
remember
anywhere else
the
in
part of the
building.
ticket booth. But
Right, because you'd have to, so there would be glass,
Yeah.
and there would be, you could hear each other,
Yeah.
then you would put your stuff underneath.
I completely
So that we
missed-
can-
I completely missed the
There's a lot
Donald's
to take
drive-through.
in. There's a lot to take in.
Yeah.
Well, plus, you had to visualize what was,
I just, yeah, I guess I had in my mind there was gonna be a door and they were gonna walk in and they couldn't get out until we told them. Like the Huntington Bank used to be out there when you walked in, you couldn't get through the next
you were
one.
locked.
You didn't have a gun on you.
You were locked in.
Did I hear that the marble at the middle school that came up was not the original marble, or that it had been partially replaced?
I had heard that too.
I didn't know if that
I
would
can't
help.
verify or
Yeah.
deny it, but that is what I had heard. I don't know how they would know that. Was there I don't think there was a date on the bottom of the marble, or if
I
it's
don't
just
know.
a type of material that they didn't start using until the 50s or something. I don't know.
That was my next question. Thank you.
You want to see if Kenny's name was on the bottom of it?
I was looking for miracle at the bottom.
It was here.
That concludes our construction update.
Thank you, John.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, then we have personnel for a special board meeting.
Sure, I just wanted to alert you of contracts for approval tomorrow night. Joe Miller, Roger Kipp, Liz Hiller, and Dave Rakel.
How long is Dave Regal's contract for?
1 year.
1 year. How's he doing?
He's doing well. Been much needed. Worked out well.
We checked with legal counsel and got a contract that's considered consultant. They're calling him contractor consultant. And so the action items for that position is to, the May motion just said Dave Rakel. So we're correcting that, entering an interim for May and June, and then the one for this year. So it'll be 1 year at a time.
As the project moves forward.
As it's ramping up now. Once it winds down, then you may not keep that contract, and you'll figure out what to do from there. So now the one difficult thing that we have here is in that contract, it's what was assumed, I guess, in this agreement was that Dave would fill in on maintenance when he could. Is that correct? Okay. So we've got some overlay there that I'm still, if I can't have them done for you tomorrow night, we just won't have them, but I'm trying to work through that because it's getting a bit convoluted.
Okay. So the title for Dave will be consultant?
Construction supervisor, but they're going to call it, Sue Yonk came up with a consultant agreement that they can be a consultant.
Okay.
But that doesn't fit, as you can imagine, with also being in doing the maintenance jobs, which as I was
Right.
rereading it again today, I was like, okay, now wait a minute, we've got an overlap here.
Okay.
So
Okay. How does the state feel about all this?
How does the what?
Dave feel about all this?
I haven't talked to him yet.
Because we didn't, okay.
I mean, I had quick, I think I had a conversation with him. There's just been so many topics this past 2 weeks, but I think I had a conversation with him that it'll be a 1-year agreement at a time.
Right.
But don't hold me to that.
Right.
So,
Okay.
but we need to have that conversation with him. But now I got to figure out if that can be navigated, so.
Right.
But he was present at our tour yesterday and was very helpful.
Good. Yeah. Yeah.
And I asked him about the concerns that, at least that you had said, or not you, but I'd heard somewhere on the board, how's he going to jockey these positions? And he did put together, here's how my day works, this is how I do it. So. Going through a lot of tightening up, and as you go through that and then keep looking back at how it was done versus the tightening up process, it takes time.
Right. Absolutely. Thank you both for doing all this. It's critical. Okay. And so Joe Miller, Roger Kipp, Liz Hilliard, and Dave are the 4 for tomorrow night.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions on those? All right. And then it looks like for the education report, we don't have anything for this month. And then under personnel,
You'll see that we've suggested an educational aid, supplemental contracts with regard to athletics and band. And below you'll see a correction to the June agenda. And that's just simply because those dates, 2017, 2018, and our previous agenda were listed as 2016, 2017. So they need to be corrected to 2017, 2018.
okay. Now with Joe going over to the middle school, is he still going to support the special ed?
No, he won't.
Okay,
So we're correcting that agenda tonight.
got it, okay.
Or, this will take place on Thursday, yes, tomorrow.
Okay,
And then on the following, and then we're correcting the agenda and then we'll of course remove that tomorrow night.
okay.
Yeah.
Did you want him to resign from that position tomorrow and then?
There was discussion about whether or not he needed to resign or not.
Okay,
And we
we'll
actually
work
hadn't
this
gotten
out
that
now.
far. Yeah, we hadn't gotten that far in the process. We just knew we needed to correct the agenda.
And then we'll make it right.
Right, and then we'll make it right. But he will not serve in that capacity this next year. He just won't have time.
Right, no, I didn't think so, but, okay.
Can we get some clarity on the other stipends for Derek and Mike and John? As far as with the dean of students, isn't this part of their?
This was in place last year. Derek was, as a dean of students, given $5,000. So that's above a teaching contract. Correct me if I'm wrong, Ernie. And John was given $7,000 to be dean of students at the middle school. And that there, you may see a differential in there due to experience.
Well, I don't know how those amounts were set.
We don't know.
We're not sure on that part.
So we stayed true to what had been given last year.
That.
And then with Mike, we don't know.
I'm just, I guess, a little confused on why we keep giving stipends.
Well, I think to serve in that capacity, it's a teaching contract because these are not certified administrators.
Okay.
They are deans. For example, if we speak about Dean and John, they don't hold an administrative license, so they're acting as deans of students on a teacher contract. So to serve those evening events and in that capacity, there's an addition to that base salary. And that's
Okay.
where I believe the stipend concept came into play. Now, how that amount was finalized and come to an arrival of that number, that I can't answer for or answer to. I know that we just honored what had been, and
Okay, yeah, it's just,
I remember that being the reason why, because of additional responsibilities of the
Okay.
teacher. Unlike the boomers.
funny the things we remember.
I'm not gonna tell my husband, it's so sexy, I wish I was things never.
All right, so then policy committee's been busy.
Can Scott read all this?
We have Christina Chesson who can help us with this
Send
evening.
them to me, I'll read through them.
Okay, I think they might be in this attachment, so
They may be.
you might have some questions that I'm happy to address. These came through a little bit earlier this summer, and so the first four have to deal with federal programs predominantly. So you can see the changes are recommended by OSBA, and it's about, the first one about administering the grant of federal programs are things like appropriate record keeping, making sure that the treasurer knows about all of the grants and that is fiscally monitors them and will oversees the grant operations in terms of the finances. It also talks about if the federal grants ever called for other kinds of programming or contracting services, that we would honor the conflict of interest and mandatory disclosures. Federal programs, generally speaking, don't they handle salaries. It's about salaries and services. But if ever those services required us to have a disclosure, Ernie and I would talk about that, and he would disclose it to ODE and do the right kind of work for that. So the first one is just an enhancement to our current policy on administration, just has grander detail about it. The second one, to dealing with the fiscal accounting, the major enhancement is that the enhancement is that they are in conformance with uniform guidelines from the Office of Budget and Management from the United States and any applicable state requirements. So that's the enhancement, just tightening that up and saying that anything we do fiscally with our accounting will comply to state regulations and federal regulations. The third one is about purchasing, so that all purchases and properties that are made with federal funds are conducted in accordance with all federal, state, and local laws and regulations. So again, the theme running through it is that we follow all federal, state, local laws and embrace this notion of uniform guidance. So we already have all these policies in place, it's just that enhancement that comes through. And the fourth one, school disposal, and Ernie's staff is really good about helping us make sure that we do the right procedures for any time we need to dispose of anything. We don't dispose very often. We usually wear it all out until no one can use it any further. But every now and then we have to refer to our policy. So again, this talks about following those uniform guidance from the U.S. Department of Budget and Management, and that's the enhancement, just making sure everything we currently did, but also honoring those uniform guidance. After those, we have an emergency management and safety plan. It's not new. This one is exactly what we had before, but I believe we have to re-adopt it. And so it's not a change. Our emergency management and safety plans are all in place. Because we changed some staffing, there's a last page to any kind of emergency plan that we have. We're going to change the people on the end, and it's already been approved locally. It will be submitted to the state through an online system. So that policy is not different. We're just re-adopting it. The emergency management and safety plan regulation, same thing, not new to us. We're just adopting it for another time to stay updated. The next round of things are food service, management for free and reduced food service work. And the change in this policy for us is that as a board, you ask us to develop procedures and manage any unpaid meal charges. So the charge that you're giving the district at the district level is to put something in place and to notify our families at the beginning of each year what those policies and procedures are, if you have an unpaid fee or fine, in order to minimize that. And then also, if we have any new enrollees in mid-year, we notify them as well. So this is really about, you're charging us to develop something that you approve. We share it with all our families so everyone knows what the rules are in terms of free and reduced food prices, but also if someone has fines and the guidelines for that. So that's a pretty great transparent addition to that. Next thing is gifted. I don't know if you remember, gifted laws changed as of July 1. So we are doing everything we should be in terms of gifted. The rule for gifted is that you have to identify all students that are gifted, but the rule has always been you don't have to serve them, which is interesting. Even though that's the rule, we do a really nice job serving them. We serve them at the high school level through AP and honors courses. We serve kids through skipping a grade as it's appropriate, even to skipping a grade just for math class. And at the elementary, in the middle school, we also have kind of an honors AP English program that we do for students. And at the elementary, it's a pull-out program for the students that they are a part of. And that's changed over the years based on mandatory time minutes and things like that. So we've always done a nice solid job across all levels for gifted. This is definitely a tighter kind of law or tighter policy now. So it tells you have to report your plan to the state. We've always done that. We just haven't had to do it every year. We've only reported when we've changed something. It shares that you have to have a certain number of screenings before a certain grade. That's always been the case. We just have to always look it up, but now it's in policy. So they're tightening it because they really have a strong desire and probably a strong base of people that are interested in gifted and making sure their needs are being served. The difference coming through for gifted is, the biggest difference probably is the fact that if we test a group of students, say in second grade, like a whole grade level test, which we do each year, and we use that information for placement in third grade. And our program in third grade is for students who have a high IQ, so they're called superior cognitive students, or who are gifted in the area of reading. That's our pull-out program currently. If I'm a second grade student and I scored gifted in math, we don't have a program for third grade for just math. So the new policies are, if that happens, I have to notify those parents, yes, I know your child's gifted, and we don't currently have a program in place for math, but here are things we're going to be doing for your child. So that's a little different, that notification of, we're sorry in a way that we don't offer something. That feels a little yucky, but it's what we're required to do. That's what's coming up, so we will do that. We'll take care of it, and we'll just explain to parents what our services do look like and how we can still help their child in math or in science or social studies. So I wanted you to know that in case you hear around the community, hey, I have a gifted student in this grade and they can't help them this year. We just can't help them in an official gifted service, but it doesn't mean we won't be working with families. So that's kind of different. Everything else in gifted isn't anything that is different in the work, it's just now in print. So nothing in there makes me pause other than notifying parents about.
Oh no, I do. Terry and Kelly agenda for
Easy one for English learners, instead of calling them limited English proficient, LEP, that would be federal, what they call them federally, they prefer to call all students that English is a second or third or fourth language English learners. They feel like it's a healthier identification for them. So that's why that policy changed. Title I, they've simply added not just parents to any communication, but family. So every time they say, we believe in parental involvement, it's also parental and family involvement. That's really the only enhancement in Title I programs. The same is true for the policy that we have on parent and family involvement. That's the enhancement. They're just welcoming the whole family to be part of the process and part of the involvement. Nothing else changes in that. And the last one goes back to the student fines and fees. And that talks about any unpaid meal charges. So they've wrapped that back into this policy, and they are saying that we will establish procedures for that. So I know that was a lot of different policies. Some of them have reoccurring themes, but we needed to get moving on these so we can be ready for school. Does anyone have any questions for me about policies? Okay. If you do, I'm always here.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Alright. And then under 4, we have buildings and grounds.
We'll just be asking for your approval of the resolution declaring that transportation to these schools is impractical.
To all of these schools? I do. I actually know based on last year. I don't know if that will be true at the beginning of this year, but I certainly have a breakdown. If you'd like to see that, I'm happy to share that or to all of you so you have a sense of where our students are.
Yeah, that would be great.
No problem.
Who's laughing?
Alright. And then the last one is our finance committee. The July reports.
Yeah, you'll have the standard July reports. C, we're still working on, we'll have to you as part of the agenda packet, just the update on appropriations. And B, I haven't had a chance to look at, with that being under finance, so.
Anything else? So tomorrow night, I just want to recap our meeting. So tomorrow night, we're going to have, we're meeting to approve the personnel that we discussed earlier. And then our regular meeting will be next Thursday.
That's the, yes.
Okay.
There are perhaps a few resignations we were accepting. I think tomorrow night, the way I'm remembering it.
Okay.
Yeah.
We have 2.
Yeah.
That they probably are.
That you already know about that I spoke of last week, I think.
And we're working on filling those again.
Absolutely.
We might have to seek help from one of our educational service centers for a part-time person if we can't find someone on our own. But that's that's typical this time of year. If we run into a stumbling block, we might ask for help. And sometimes they have a person who they could place here and with us, and that might help us for the short term if we're not able to do it alone.
So between tomorrow night, I know you're still working through any contracts and whatnot. Are there any other positions that you're trying to fill? I'm trying to gauge whether or not we're going to need a special meeting.
I don't
before
think we
next
will.
Thursday.
I don't think we will. We are looking for a second grade person. We had someone, but when we negotiated their salary, they were not willing to take such a pay cut because their years of experience was extraordinary. So it will be no challenge at all to find a second grade person. It's a very competitive market. So Mr. Yates is working on that.
Okay.
And then you mentioned the ESL part-time at Williams that will likely be working with Hamilton County Educational Service Center. And then Shannon Eschman's 8-week maternity leave will be working to find someone through Hamilton County to help us with that work. Other than that, I believe we are ready to go.
And historically speaking, you've been comfortable, even if a teacher with all the licensure in place starts maybe the day before at a new teacher meeting, and then you approve, or in this case it'd be the Monday, the 14th, and then you approve on that Thursday.
Right.
As long as you're still comfortable doing that, we would be okay.
Yeah.
Great. Then that's how we'll work.
Okay.
So it's tomorrow at 5:30?
Tomorrow's 5:30, and it should be relatively short
Right.
meeting. And then next Thursday will be our official regular.
That's right. That's right. And next Thursday we'll be here.
Discuss this.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
That's it.
All right. Good. We're adjourned.
Hey Kathy, I think that's, is it spring or school?